You have no idea who I am, do you? Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it hit Ryan Carter like a wrench to the chest. He was already halfway under her hood, hands covered in grease, when those 7 words stopped him cold. He straightened up slowly, looked at her, really looked at her for the first time, and the world tilted. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Ryan Carter had been awake since 5. That wasn't unusual. When you ran a one-man auto shop and raised a 9-year-old girl on your own, the luxury of sleeping in was something that belonged to another life. A life he hadn't lived in a very long time. He was standing at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee into a travel mug with one hand and braiding Lily's hair with the other, which was physically impossible, and yet somehow happened every single morning in the Carter household. "Dad, you're pulling." "I'm not pulling." "You are. You pull when you're distracted." "I'm not distracted." "You burned the toast." He glanced at the toaster. A thin ribbon of smoke curled toward the ceiling. That's intentional. You said you liked it crispy." "Crispy, Dad, not charcoal." He set down the coffee, rescued what was left of the toast, and scraped the blackened edges into the sink with a butter knife, all while Lily sat perfectly still on the kitchen stool, watching him with those large, impossibly observant brown eyes she'd inherited from her mother. Eyes that missed absolutely nothing. "You've got your cleats?" he asked. "In my bag." "Water bottle?" "In my bag." "Permission slip for the field trip?" A pause. "In my bag." He turned and looked at her. She met his gaze without flinching. "It's on the table." "Lily." "I'll grab it on the way out." "Dad, relax." "I'm relaxed." "You burned the toast." He opened his mouth, closed it, handed her the slightly less charcoal piece, and poured her orange juice, and said nothing because there was nothing to say. She was 9 years old, and she was already winning every argument. He had approximately 9 more years before he was completely obsolete. He kissed the top of her head. She let him. That still meant something. By 7:15, Lily was on the school bus waving at him through the foggy window with one hand and holding her permission slip with the other because she'd found it on the table exactly like she said she would. Ryan stood in the gravel driveway of his property and watched the bus roll down the mountain road until it disappeared around the bend, and then he stood there a moment longer, the way he always did, just to make sure. Then he turned and walked across the yard to the shop. Chapter beginning. Crestfall, Colorado, sat at just under 9,000 feet, tucked between 2 ridges, like something the mountains had grown themselves. Population 843 if you counted old Earl Hutchins, who technically lived in his truck at the edge of town and disputed being counted. Ryan had been born here, left for 6 years for college for a brief and tumultuous chapter that he'd mostly made peace with and come back. He'd taken over his father's garage at 28 when his dad's knees gave out, and he'd been here ever since. He didn't regret it. He told himself that every morning. Sometimes he even believed it. The shop was his in the way that things only become yours when you've bled and sweated and wept over them. Every tool had a place. Every job had a rhythm. He knew the sound of every engine that came through his bay the way a musician knows a chord. He could hear a misfire at 40 yards. He could diagnose a failing alternator by the smell alone. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his. He was deep into a brake job on Tommy Garfield's pickup when the call came in. He almost didn't answer. His hands were covered in brake dust, and he had 3 jobs backed up, and the radio was playing something loud enough to cover the ringing. But something made him reach for the phone. Some instinct he couldn't name. "Carter's Auto Repair." "Yes, hello." The voice on the other end was cool, precise, and completely self-possessed in the way that immediately told him this was not a local. "I'm on Ridgeline Road, approximately 4 miles past the Crestfall Junction. My vehicle has stopped. I'm not sure what the problem is. It simply lost power and coasted to a stop. I'm safe. I just need assistance." Ryan straightened up, tucking the phone between his ear and shoulder. "What are you driving?" "A Range Rover. It's 3 years old. It's never had a problem before." Is there a warning light on the dash? A brief pause. The fuel light, which is strange because I filled it in Denver. He closed his eyes for a second. Fuel pump maybe, or a sensor. Either way, she's not going anywhere on her own. All right, he said. I'll be there in about 20 minutes. Stay in the vehicle. It's cold up there. I'm aware of the temperature, she said, and there was something dry and almost amused in her voice. I was going to suggest the same thing to myself. He almost smiled. Almost. I'll see you in 20, he said, and hung up. He pulled the tow truck out onto Ridgeline Road and drove north into the mountains, where the pines grew close on both sides, and the road narrowed to something that asked you politely, but firmly, not to drive too fast. The sky was the particular shade of pale blue that Colorado saved for October mornings, crisp and enormous, the kind of sky that made you feel small in the best possible way. He spotted the Range Rover from about a quarter-mile out. Black. Spotless, or it had been before the mountain roads got to it. It was pulled neatly off to the shoulder hazard lights blinking. Professional. Whoever she was, she didn't panic. He pulled the tow truck up behind it and climbed out. The woman was already outside, standing near the front of the Range Rover, with her arms crossed loosely over her chest. Not the crossed arms of someone who's cold or scared, but the crossed arms of someone who is accustomed to waiting for things to happen and isn't particularly bothered by it. She wore a dark coat. Her dark hair was up. She looked like she'd stepped out of an office building and accidentally ended up on a mountain. Ryan grabbed his toolkit from behind the seat. "Morning," he said, approaching. "Ryan Carter, let's take a look." "Thank you for coming quickly," she said. Her voice was the same as on the phone, measured, controlled. But there was something about it, a specific quality, a cadence, that snagged somewhere in the back of his mind like a piece of thread catching on a nail. He ignored it. He was already moving to the hood. Did the engine sputter before it died, or did it just cut out? "It sputtered for about 30 seconds, she said. Then it simply stopped. No drama. He popped the hood and leaned in. Checked the basics first, the things you always checked, the habits his father had drilled into him before he could drive. Then he reached for the fuel pressure gauge from his kit, hooked it up, and turned the key she'd left in the ignition. The reading confirmed it before he'd even finished the thought. "Fuel pump," he said, straightening. "It's not delivering pressure. I can tow you back to the shop and have it fixed same day. I'll need to order the part, but I keep a lot of the common ones for Range Rovers in stock. People drive them up here all the time, and—" He turned around as he spoke, and stopped. She was looking at him, not the way people look at a mechanic, not assessing, not impatient. She was looking at him the way you look at something you've been searching for in a drawer for years, and have just found unexpectedly under something else. There was recognition in her face, but more than that, there was something older, something careful. She hadn't said anything. "And the parts should be—" He faltered. Something in his chest had gone very quiet, in the way it only goes quiet when the rest of his brain is working very hard. "Do I—" He stopped, shook his head slightly. "I'm sorry. Have we met?" She held his gaze for a moment that lasted too long to be nothing. "It's been a while," she said quietly. I wasn't sure." "I'm sorry I don't—" "Sophia," she said. And she said it simply, without theater, the way you say a word that's been true for a long time. "Sophia Bennett. We were at CU Denver together. 15 years ago." The name went through him like cold water. He didn't say anything. He wasn't sure he could. The calculus of 15 years happened in the space of about 3 seconds. All of it, the whole equation, compressed into something that felt like a fist closing around his sternum. Sophia Bennett. Sophia, who had sat across from him in an economics lecture hall sophomore year and borrowed his notes because she'd slept through the first half and then returned them with annotations in red pen that were more useful than his original notes. Sophia, who argued passionately and fiercely about things she cared about, which was everything. Sophia, who had laughed at his terrible jokes and made him better ones in return, and who had walked through 2 years of his life like a current he'd tried very hard not to get swept away by, and who had then, at the end of junior year, been offered a fellowship in New York, and taken it, and gone. She'd told him she was going. It wasn't a betrayal. They hadn't been. They weren't. It was complicated in the specific way that things are complicated when you're 21, and neither person can say the true thing out loud. She had gone. He had stayed. And then piece by piece the life he was living now had assembled itself around him. "Sophia," he said. His own voice surprised him. Flat, careful. The voice he used when he needed to think before he spoke. "Yeah," she said, softly. He stopped, looked at her, really looked at her the way he hadn't when he'd pulled up. He'd seen woman stranded vehicle. Now he saw her, the same face 15 years later, the same directness in her eyes, the same quality of stillness, like she was always thinking 3 steps ahead of whatever she was saying. "You look older," she offered. "I was going to say, it's fine if you were going to say older. I was going to say different." He paused. "But the same." She looked at him for a long moment. "You've barely changed," she said, and there was something in her voice, not nostalgia exactly, more like someone noting a fact that is both comforting and quietly devastating. He didn't know what to do with that. So he did the thing he always did when he didn't know what to do with something. He went back to work. "Right," he said, reaching for the tow cable. "We should get your car down to the shop. Ryan." He stopped. "Are you going to pretend this is normal?" she asked. Not challenging, genuinely curious. "Because I've been standing here for 20 minutes rehearsing this moment, and I can tell you it doesn't feel normal." He looked at her over his shoulder. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know, something real." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "It's been 15 years, Sophia." "I know. A lot happened in 15 years. I know that too. You could have." He stopped himself, shook his head. "Don't go there. Not on a mountain road, not before coffee. Let's get your car to the shop, and then..." He exhaled. "And then we can talk if you want, or we don't have to." She nodded once. "Okay." He turned back to the cable. His hands were steadier than he felt. But they didn't talk much on the drive down. Sophia sat in the passenger seat of the tow truck, her phone in her hand, though Ryan noticed she wasn't looking at it. She was looking out the window, at the pines, at the road, at the mountains, doing what mountains do, which is exist with a complete indifference to whatever crisis you brought to them. He kept his eyes on the road. "You live here?" she asked after about 10 minutes. "Born here, went to Denver for school, came back. You took over your dad's shop." He glanced at her sideways. "You remembered that." "You talked about it," she said. "You said you felt guilty for leaving, that you thought about it every time he called and tried not to let it sound like he needed you." Ryan said nothing. He had said that. Junior year, late at night in the library, the kind of conversation you have when you're young and unguarded, and the hour has stripped all the social armor off. The kind of conversation he hadn't had in a long time. "How is he?" she asked. "Your dad." "He passed," Ryan said. 6 years ago. Heart. "I'm sorry." She said it with directness, not with the soft, helpless quality that people's condolences usually had. Like she meant it specifically. "He had a good life," Ryan said. "He liked that I took the shop. He didn't say so, but I could tell." A pause. "That sounds like you." "What does..." "Making peace with the unspoken thing," she said. "You were always good at that. Better than me." He didn't answer. Because she was right. And because sometimes being right about someone feels like a debt neither of you can pay. They pulled into the shop lot. He got out and started unhooking the Range Rover. She stood to the side and watched. "How long will the repair take?" she asked. "I need to order the pump. Should be here by tomorrow morning. Day after at the latest." She nodded slowly. "Is there a place to stay in town?" He looked at her. "In Crestfall." "Yes." There's the Ridgeline Inn. It's fine. It's simple. Mrs. Paulus runs it." "Simple is fine," Sophia said, and she said it in a way that made him almost believe she meant it. He watched her pull out her phone and pull up a search, methodical, efficient, adapted instantly the way she adapted to everything, and he stood in his own shop in Crestfall, Colorado, holding a tow cable, and tried to remember the last time the world had felt this suddenly and completely uncertain. She was back at 3 o'clock. He heard her car a rental. She must have arranged it while he was working pull into the lot, and he kept his attention on the fuel pump diagnostic he was running. Or he tried to. "The inn was full," she said from the doorway of the shop bay. He looked up. She stood there with a phone in one hand and a slight air of a woman who is not accustomed to things not being available when she wants them. "Mrs. Paulus has a conference," she said. "Something about quilt restoration. Apparently, people come from 4 counties for this." "Every October," Ryan confirmed. "Every October." She processed this. "Is there anywhere else?" "In Crestfall, Num. You'd have to go back toward Elk Ridge about 20 minutes. There's a motel there. I can call ahead for you, if—" "That would be fine." He pulled out his phone and dialed. He could feel her watching him, the specific quality of attention she'd always had. Not intrusive, not uncomfortable, just present, like she was interested in everything he did as a data point toward understanding him better. It used to make him feel known, which was the best feeling, and terrifying, which was close behind. The motel was booked too, some kind of fishing tournament. He hung up. "October," he said, almost to himself. "October?" she echoed. And there was the ghost of a smile in her voice. He put his phone on the workbench. He looked at his hands, which were covered in grease and were therefore useful to look at when you needed something to look at. Then he said the thing that he would later wonder why he said, except that it was practical, and Crestfall didn't have another option within 30 miles, and he'd been raised to be practical above all else. "I have a spare room," he said. "It's clean. Lily uses it when her aunt visits." A silence. "Lily," Sophia repeated carefully. "Your daughter?" "Yeah." He met her eyes. "She's 9. She's—" He paused. "She's the whole story, pretty much." Sophia looked at him for a moment, and he could see her calibrating something, running the numbers, weighing the variables the way she'd always weighed things. Then she said, "Only if it's not an imposition." "It's practical," he said. "Right." She was quiet for a beat. "Is that how you're going to play this, very practical?" He looked at her evenly. "I haven't figured out how I'm going to play this yet," he said. "I'm working with about 3 hours of information." She nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He went back to the fuel pump. She didn't leave. After a moment, "Can I wait here? I can sit out of the way. I won't bother you." He thought about it for exactly 1 second. "There's a stool by the window," he said. She found it. She sat down. She pulled out her laptop, and within 2 minutes, she was on a call, calm, concise, authoritative speaking, about revenue projections and acquisition terms, with the same focus she brought to everything. Ryan worked. Sophia worked. The shop was quiet, except for the sound of tools, and her voice, and the wind outside. It was, he thought, a deeply strange 20 minutes. It was also, if he was being honest with himself, which he generally tried not to be on the subject of loneliness, almost unbearably comfortable. Lily came home at 4:15. Ryan heard the bus, wiped his hands on the rag, and walked to the door of the shop bay. He watched his daughter hop off the last step backpack, bouncing cleats tied around the straps of her bag, because she'd taken them off on the bus, apparently because she always took them off on the bus. "Did you win?" he called. "We tied," she said. "But I scored the tying goal, so basically I won." "That is—" He smiled despite himself. "That's not how that works. It's how I work." She walked past him into the shop, dropped her bag, and then went completely still. She'd seen Sophia. Sophia had looked up from her laptop. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Ryan stood in the doorway and watched. Hi, Lily said finally. Hi, Sophia said. Who are you? Sophia. My car broke down. Your dad is fixing it. Lily turned and looked at her father with those eyes that missed nothing. He held up both hands. She needed a place to stay, he said. The inn is full. She's taking the spare room. Lily turned back to Sophia. She was doing the assessment that Ryan had watched her do since she was 4 years old, the comprehensive silent evaluation that made grown adults visibly uncomfortable. Sophia held her gaze without flinching, without performing, without doing the slightly desperate thing that most adults did when Lily looked at them, which was to say something charming and calculated. She just looked back calmly, as if she was comfortable being seen. After about 10 seconds, Lily apparently reached a conclusion. Do you like chili? She asked. Sophia blinked just slightly. Yes, actually. Dad makes chili on Tuesdays, Lily said, with the gravity of someone relaying important facts. It's the second best chili in Colorado. What's the first best? Sophia asked. Lily smiled slow and deliberate. Mine. Ryan exhaled. There it is. He looked at Sophia. She was smiling too, a real smile, the kind that worked its way up from somewhere unguarded. The kind of smile he'd been watching her suppress since she said his name on the mountain road. He turned away, reached for his jacket. 15 years. 3 miles of mountain road. A broken fuel pump. He did not believe in fate particularly. He was a mechanic. He believed in cause and effect, in what breaks and what can be fixed in the specific gravity of things that are real and present and true. But standing there in his shop in Crestfall, Colorado with his daughter, making friends with the woman he'd let walk out of his life at 21, he found himself considering for the first time in a long time. What if some things don't break? What if some things just wait? He went to start the chili. The chili was good. Ryan knew it was good because Lily ate 2 bowls and didn't comment on it, which was her highest form of praise. Sophia ate 1 bowl slowly, deliberately, the way she seemed to do everything like she was paying attention to the experience, instead of just moving through it. They sat at the kitchen table, the 3 of them, which was strange and ordinary at the same time. The kind of strange that doesn't announce itself loudly. It just sits there quietly and waits for you to notice it. You have a company? Lily asked Sophia somewhere between the first and second bowl. I do, Sophia said. What kind? Technology. We build software that helps hospitals manage patient data. Lily considered this with the seriousness of a judge reviewing evidence. So you help sick people? Indirectly. Yes. That's good, Lily said with finality. Dad fixes things too. He fixed Mr. Kowalski's truck 3 times, and Mr. Kowalski still drives like he's trying to break it again. Ryan put down his spoon. Lily. It's true. It's not our business. You said it first. He had. 2 weeks ago to Tommy Garfield, but apparently nothing he said in this house was ever actually private. He looked at Sophia across the table. She was pressing her lips together in the very specific way of someone trying not to laugh in front of a child. She's not wrong, Ryan said. About Mr. Kowalski. Sophia laughed then, a real one, and it landed in the kitchen like something warm and unexpected, the way a window of sunlight moves across a floor. Lily noticed. Ryan noticed Lily noticing. He stood up and started clearing plates. After dinner, Lily disappeared upstairs to do homework, and Sophia offered to help with the dishes. And Ryan said it was fine, and she did it anyway, standing at the sink beside him, handing him things to dry, which was such a domestic and ordinary act that he had to actively focus on the plates in his hands to keep himself grounded. She's remarkable, Sophia said quietly. She is. Where's her mother? He didn't answer immediately. He dried a bowl, set it in the cabinet. Then, she left when Lily was 2. We weren't. It was complicated. She's in Portland now. They talk on the phone. Lily handles it better than most adults would. Because she learned from you, Sophia said. He looked at her. Making peace with the unspoken thing, she said. Remember, you're good at it. He turned back to the sink. Maybe, or maybe she just got the better parts of both of us. A silence that wasn't uncomfortable. The water ran. A dish clinked. "I'm sorry," Sophia said, "about how it all happened. With you. With the way things ended when I left." "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. "I know. I'm not apologizing for leaving." She handed him the last bowl. "I'm apologizing for not saying what I should have said before I did." He took the bowl, held it, didn't look at her. "What should you have said?" She was quiet for a beat too long. "Good night, Ryan," she said instead. And she folded the dish towel and set it on the counter and went down the hall to the spare room and closed the door quietly behind her. He stood in the kitchen for a full minute. Then he turned off the light and went to bed and lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and did not sleep for a long time. He was in the shop by 6 the next morning. The fuel pump had arrived on the overnight delivery. He'd paid extra for it, a fact he told himself was purely professional, and he had it installed by 8:15. He was running the diagnostic when he heard the back door of the house open and close. Sophia appeared in the shop doorway with 2 mugs of coffee. He stared at her. "I found the coffee," she said. "And the mugs. I hope that's all right. You made coffee in my house. You were in the shop. It seemed like the efficient thing to do." He wiped his hands and took the mug. The coffee was exactly the way he made it. Strong black, no sugar. He hadn't told her that. "How did you know?" "You drank it black in college," she said. "People don't usually change that." He looked at her over the rim of the mug. She was looking at the Range Rover with professional curiosity. "Is it done?" she asked. "Almost. Another hour." She nodded, sipped her coffee, didn't move toward the door. "You could go back inside," he said. "It's cold out here." "I'm fine." "Sophia?" "I'm fine, Ryan." She turned and looked at him directly the way she always did when she was finished with the peripheral conversation and wanted to get to the one underneath it. "I've been sitting in that room since 5 o'clock thinking about what I didn't say last night." He set down his mug. "You don't have to. I turned down a meeting with my board this morning," she said. "Do you know how many times I've done that in 11 years? I'm guessing not many." "0, she said. "The number is 0. She exhaled. "I told them I was dealing with a situation, which is true. Just not the one they're imagining." He looked at her carefully. "What situation are you dealing with?" "You," she said simply. "And the fact that I drove up this mountain road because I was stressed and exhausted and I needed to think, and instead I found you, and now I cannot locate a single coherent thought." The shop was very quiet. "You could have kept driving," he said, "past Crestfall." "My fuel pump had other ideas." "Mechanically, yes, but before that." She held his gaze. "I didn't know you were here. I hadn't thought about Crestfall in years. I want you to know that because I don't want you to think I engineered this. That's not something I would do." "I know," he said. And he did know. Whatever Sophia was, she wasn't manipulative. She was direct to the point where it sometimes felt like a physical thing, like a door swinging open. "Okay," she said. "Good." A pause. "Your car will be ready by 9, he said. Something shifted in her face, a calculation or the conclusion of one. "And if I wanted to stay another day..." He looked at her for a long moment. "The spare room's yours as long as you need it," he said. She nodded once, and she took her coffee back inside. Ryan stood in the shop alone and breathed out slowly through his nose and picked up his wrench and went back to work. And if his hands were slightly less steady than they'd been 20 minutes ago, nobody was there to see it. Chapdog. She stayed another day, and then another. It wasn't dramatic about it. She didn't announce it. She simply remained the way water remains in a vessel that has room for it. She worked from the spare room during the day, voice-controlled and precise on her calls, the corporate Sophia and the kitchen table. Sophia in complete coexistence, and Ryan found that he'd stopped being surprised by the sight of her in his house, and started being surprised by the moments when she wasn't in it. On the third evening, Lily asked Sophia if she wanted to come to soccer practice. Sophia said yes before she'd even looked up from her laptop. Ryan drove. Lily explained the team dynamics from the back seat with the thoroughness of a sports analyst who was good, who tried hard, but struggled, who was secretly the most important player even though the coach didn't know it yet. Sophia listened to every word with full attention. She asked follow-up questions that were so specific and intelligent that Lily actually paused mid-sentence and said, "You really know soccer." "I played in college," Sophia said. "Midfielder." Lily turned to her father. "You didn't tell me she played soccer." "I didn't know," Ryan said. "There's a lot you don't know," Lily said in a tone that suggested this was a failure he should correct immediately. At practice, Sophia sat in the metal stands with Ryan's hands wrapped around a cup of terrible vending machine hot chocolate, and they watched Lily in silence for a while. Then Sophia said without looking at him, "Tell me about her. Everything." So he did. He told her about Lily at 2 years old, serious-faced and determined, carrying a toy wrench around the shop and handing it to him at appropriate moments, like she already understood what was needed. About the summer, she decided she was going to learn to read by herself, and disappeared for 3 days with a pile of picture books, and emerged able to read chapter books. About the soccer goal she scored last spring that made him stand up in the stands alone and cheer so hard that 3 parents turned and stared, and he didn't care even slightly. He talked for 45 minutes. Sophia didn't interrupt him once. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, "You love her so completely." "Yes. It shows in everything, the way you look at her, the way you talk about her." She paused. "She's lucky, Ryan." "I'm the lucky one." Both things can be true. He glanced at her. There was something in her face that he recognized, a careful, controlled expression that she used. He was beginning to understand when something was affecting her more than she intended to allow. "Sophia, I'm fine," she said the way she said it when she wasn't quite. "You don't have to be fine." "Old habit," she said quietly. He didn't push it. He knew about old habits. He had plenty of his own. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat with her cleats still on, and Sophia turned down the radio without being asked, because she noticed it had happened, and Ryan drove through the mountain dark and thought, "This is the thing. This is the exact thing. The small noticing. That's what it is." On the 4th night, he found out about the acquisition. It came out sideways, the way the real things always do. They were at the kitchen table after Lily had gone to bed, both of them with cups of tea. Neither had particularly wanted, but both had made, because it gave the hands something to do. Sophia had her laptop open, but she wasn't looking at it. She was looking at the window, and whatever she was seeing, it wasn't the glass. "My board is pushing me to accept a buyout offer," she said without preamble. He looked up. "For your company. $380 million, she said, "from a private equity firm. They've been circling for 2 years. My board thinks it's the right time." He sat with that number for a moment. "What do you think?" "I think—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I built that company in a studio apartment in Manhattan. I worked 18-hour days for 3 years. I made payroll by selling my car. Twice." She paused. "I think it's my company. I think they want to strip it down and sell the pieces, and they're very elegant about describing it, but that's what private equity does. Then don't sell. It's not that simple." "Why not?" She looked at him. "Because being right isn't always enough. Because you can be the person who built something from nothing and still lose it in a boardroom to people who understand spreadsheets better than they understand what the thing actually does." Her voice was flat, controlled. The flatness of someone holding something heavy without letting it shake. "I have until December to decide." "December," he said. "That's 2 months." "Yes." He turned his mug in his hands. "What did you come up here to think about before the car?" She looked at him directly. "That question." He held her gaze. "And have you thought about it?" "I've thought about approximately nothing else," she said. "And somehow I'm less sure than I was before." Something in his chest shifted. He wasn't sure it was entirely about the acquisition. "Whatever you decide," he said, "decide it because it's what you want, not what they want, not what the spreadsheets want." "What do you want, Ryan?" she asked, quietly, like it just came out. He was very still. He exhaled. "That's a different conversation." "Is it?" Her voice was careful, but her eyes weren't. He stood up, carried his mug to the sink, stood with his back to her for a moment, looking at the dark window over the sink, his own face looking back at him from the glass. "Lily has a game Saturday," he said. "You should, if you're still here, you should come." A pause behind him. "Okay," Sophia said, quiet and simple. He turned off the kitchen light and said good night and went to his room, and this time he slept but slowly, and not before lying in the dark for a long while, thinking about a girl who'd left at 21, and the woman who'd come back at 36, and the specific cruelty of time that makes you think you've moved past something, only to discover that you haven't moved past it at all. You've just been carrying it in a different direction. Saturday came, and Sophia came to the game, and Lily scored twice, and the second goal, a clean left-footed shot from outside the box, made Sophia leap to her feet in the stands and shout something uncharacteristic and loud that made the parents around her turn and stare. Ryan looked at her in pure surprise. She sat back down, fixed her coat. "She told me she'd been working on that shot," she said, composed again. "When did she tell you that?" "This morning. We talked while you were in the shop." He stared at her. "You and Lily talked, this morning, while I was in the shop." "She knocked on my door at 7. She wanted to show me a video of the move she'd been practicing." Sophia glanced at him sideways. "She made me promise not to tell you because her words, 'Dad gets weird about things.'" Ryan opened his mouth, closed it. Lily was running back to her position on the field, pumping her fist once, compact and sure. His daughter, 9 years old and already forming private alliances. "She trusts you," he said. He didn't fully intend for it to sound like what it sounded like. Sophia heard it anyway. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then quietly, "I'm not going to hurt her, Ryan." He looked at his hands. "I know. I mean it. I know you mean it." He exhaled. "That's not—" He stopped, looked at the field, looked at Lily, fierce and focused and 9 years old, and so entirely herself, it made his chest ache with love and terror simultaneously. "She gets attached," he said. "She doesn't show it the usual way. She's not clingy. She just—" He paused. "She just starts making room for someone. And once she does that, it's real for her. And I can't watch someone not show up for her. I've seen what that does. I can't—" "Ryan?" Sophia's voice was steady, certain in the way it was only certain when she'd already thought something all the way through. "I hear you." He looked at her. Her eyes were direct and clear and steady, and he knew in the specific way you know things. Not because someone told you, but because you have 15 years of evidence that when Sophia Bennett said she heard you, she meant it completely. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. On the field, Lily received a pass and drove forward without hesitation, fearless and full of certainty. Ryan watched his daughter, felt Sophia beside him solid and present in the cold October air. And somewhere underneath the caution, underneath the years and the practicality, and every wall he'd built so carefully and so competently, something moved. Something that had been entirely still for a very long time. He didn't name it. Not yet. But he felt it. Clear as a wrench in a clean grip, solid and unmistakable. It was there. The second week happened without anyone deciding it would. Sophia didn't announce she was staying. She didn't negotiate or explain. She simply continued to be there, working from the spare room, appearing in the kitchen in the mornings, adjusting to the rhythms of the Carter household, with the quiet efficiency of someone who has always been good at reading a room and matching its frequency. Ryan stopped waiting for her to say she was leaving. He wasn't sure when that happened exactly. Somewhere between the soccer game and the Tuesday, she showed up in the shop doorway with his lunch because he'd forgotten to eat again. "You do this often?" she asked, setting the plate on the workbench. "Forget to eat. Work through it." "Most days." She crossed her arms. "That's not sustainable." "Neither is running a company on 4 hours of sleep," he said without looking up from the engine he was diagnosing. "But I'm guessing you know something about that." A pause. "Fair point," she said. And she left him to it, without making it a bigger thing, which was exactly what he needed, and which he suspected she knew. That was the thing about Sophia that he was slowly, helplessly cataloging. She didn't make things bigger than they were. She didn't perform concern. She just acted on it cleanly, and then moved on. It was the most unexpectedly disarming quality he'd encountered in another person in years, maybe ever. He ate the lunch. It was good. She'd found things in his refrigerator he'd forgotten were there. That evening, Lily asked Sophia to help with a school project about women in business, and Sophia sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours, walking Lily through the history of female entrepreneurs, with the kind of enthusiasm that Ryan could hear from the shop, even over the sound of the radio. He turned the radio down. Just slightly. "And the thing people don't tell you," Sophia was saying when he passed through for coffee, "is that being the smartest person in the room doesn't mean they'll listen to you. You have to make them listen. That's a completely different skill." Lily was taking notes. Actually taking notes, pencil moving fast. "How do you make them listen?" "You stop asking," Sophia said. "You start stating. There's a difference. When you ask, you give someone the option to say no. When you state, you change the structure of the conversation." Lily looked up. "Did someone not listen to you?" Sophia smiled slow and real. "Many someones. For many years." "What did you do?" "I built something they couldn't ignore," Sophia said. "And then they had to listen because I wasn't asking anymore. I was the one with something they wanted." Lily wrote that down word for word. Ryan stood in the kitchen doorway with his coffee mug and felt something happen in his chest that he had absolutely no business feeling, and went back to the shop. The call came on a Wednesday. Ryan was in the middle of an oil change when he heard Sophia's voice change through the wall of the spare room, the specific shift in register that meant she'd moved from managing to reacting. He heard it the way he heard an engine misfire. Before he could fully identify it, his body had already registered it as wrong. He didn't eavesdrop. He wasn't built for it. But the walls in the house were old and thin, and he caught fragments. "Told you I needed more time, Marcus." A pause. "That's not what I agreed to." Another pause longer. Then very quietly, and with a control that sounded like it was costing her, "You don't have the authority to do that without my signature. You know you don't." Then silence. He kept working. 10 minutes later, Sophia came into the shop. She stood in the doorway with her phone in her hand, and her face very still, and her jaw set in a way he recognized from 15 years ago, the exact expression she wore when she was deciding whether to let something show. "Everything okay?" he asked. "My CFO spoke to the private equity firm," she said, "without telling me. He told them I was ready to negotiate." Ryan straightened up slowly. "Were you?" "No." The word came out clean and flat. "I was not." He wiped his hands on the rag, gave her his full attention. "What does that mean for the deal?" "It means they think I'm further along than I am. It means Marcus, my CFO, has decided that because he thinks the offer is right, he's going to create conditions that make it harder for me to say no." She paused. "It means someone who works for me is trying to back me into a corner." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Is this the first time he's done something like this?" She opened her mouth, closed it. The pause said everything. "How long has he been your CFO?" Ryan asked. 7 years. "And you trust him?" "I trusted him," she said. The past tense landed between them like something dropped. He looked at her. "What are you going to do?" She squared her shoulders, a small movement almost invisible, but he caught it. I'm going to call the firm directly, set the record straight, and then I'm going to have a very direct conversation with Marcus about what his role actually is. She paused. And what it isn't. You want to make that call from here? She looked at him, and something in her face shifted, surprised and then not surprised, and then quietly grateful. Yes, she said, if that's okay. Use the kitchen table, he said. Better signal. She nodded, turned to go, then stopped. Ryan? She didn't turn around. Thank you for not telling me it's going to be fine. I don't know if it's going to be fine, he said honestly. I know. She exhaled. That's why it helps. She went inside. He heard her voice begin again through the wall. Different now, controlled and precise, and carrying the specific authority of someone who built something from nothing and has never forgotten what that cost. He went back to work, and he thought not for the first time and not for the last that Sophia Bennett was the most fully realized person he had ever known. And that knowing that did not make any of this simpler. The conversation with Marcus apparently went badly. Ryan could tell by the way she came out of the house 2 hours later and walked directly to the far side of the yard and stood there for a moment with her back to everything. Arms crossed looking at the mountains. He'd seen people stand like that before. It was the posture of someone recalibrating. He gave her 4 minutes. Then he walked over and stood beside her. She didn't say anything for another minute. Then, he told me I was being sentimental about the company. Ryan said nothing. He said the numbers are right, the timing is right, and that my hesitation was... She stopped, laughed once short and humorless. He called it emotional thinking. He said, and I quote, "The CEO who built this is different from the one who needs to sell it." He said that to you? Yes. Ryan looked at the mountains. What did you say back? I told him that the CEO who built it is exactly the one who gets to decide what happens to it. She paused. And then I told him to clear his calendar for Monday. Ryan glanced at her. Are you firing him? She was quiet for a beat. I don't know yet. I know that I can't have someone in that role who thinks he understands my company better than I do. Another pause. But 7 years is a long time. I built that finance department with him. He was there when we almost didn't make payroll. Her voice was careful, controlled, and underneath both of those things conflicted. That makes it harder, Ryan said. Yes. Not impossible. She turned and looked at him. No, she said. Not impossible. She studied his face for a moment. How do you do that? Do what? Say the exact right thing without making it feel like advice. He shrugged. I've got a 9-year-old. You learn to say things sideways. She smiled at that, and the smile was tired but real, and it stayed on her face longer than her smiles usually did, like she'd stopped monitoring it. He registered that, filed it somewhere he didn't examine directly. Come inside, he said. Lily's making something. She texted me from upstairs, which means it's either very good or mildly dangerous. Sophia laughed, actually laughed full and unguarded. She texted you from upstairs. She does it regularly. Last week she texted me a list of grievances about the breakfast situation. They walked back toward the house together, and the conversation shifted, and the weight of the acquisition sat temporarily in the yard where they'd left it. Ryan knew it would follow her inside eventually. Everything important does, but there was something to be said for giving a problem 30 seconds of fresh air. What Lily had made was pan-fried quesadillas with what she described as customized filling, which turned out to mean she'd found everything in the refrigerator that was about to expire and put it in a tortilla. It was against all reasonable probability excellent. They ate at the kitchen table. Lily informed them both about the social situation at school, with the objective detachment of a documentary narrator, then asked Sophia how the work stuff was going with the specific but uncomplicated interest of someone who understood adults had problems but didn't yet feel the weight of them. Complicated, Sophia said. Is it the money thing? Sophia looked at her surprised. What do you know about the money thing? Dad says most adult problems are either about money or feelings, Lily said. And you don't seem like someone who has a feelings problem. She said it as a compliment, matter of fact. Sophia glanced at Ryan. He raised both hands. She came to that independently, he said. I'm sitting right here, Lily said. I know, Sophia said. And you're correct. It's the money thing, mostly. Is mostly the money thing also a feelings thing? A pause that lasted just a breath too long. Smart kid, Sophia said to Ryan quietly. Devastating, he agreed. After dinner, after dishes, after Lily went upstairs to read, the house settled into its nighttime quiet. Ryan poured 2 glasses of water, and they sat in the living room. Not the kitchen table this time, which felt like a different proximity. Somehow, like the room had contracted slightly, and Sophia said what she'd been not saying for hours. If I sell the company, she said, I become a very wealthy woman with a very large amount of freedom and no idea what to do with it. Ryan waited. If I don't sell, she continued, I fight Marcus. I fight the board. I restructure the leadership. I implement the remote framework I've been designing for a year, and I keep building the thing I built. She paused. On my own terms. Which one scares you more? He asked. She looked at him steadily. The first one. Then you already know. Knowing and doing are different distances, she said. They are, he agreed. But you close one by starting. She was quiet. The house breathed around them. Outside the window, the Colorado dark was complete and full of stars, and it was the kind of night that reminded you that you were small, and the world was very large, and the choices you made in it were both tremendously important, and in the scale of stars entirely survivable. Can I ask you something? Sophia said. Yes. Are you glad I stayed? Be honest. He held her gaze. Yes. Why? He thought about that. The honest answer was complicated and layered and contained 15 years and a daughter and a shop and a whole life assembled out of practical decisions. But the core of it was simple. Because you remind me that I'm a person, he said. Not just a function. She was very still. A function, she repeated quietly. I'm Lily's dad. I'm the mechanic. I'm the guy who shows up, handles things, keeps everything running. He paused. You look at me like I'm a person who thinks about things, wants things. He stopped. It's been a while since someone did that. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight and temperature and meaning. Sophia set her glass down carefully. Ryan, she said. And then she said nothing else because she didn't need to. He looked at her across the living room, this woman who had walked out of his life at 21 and who he'd convinced himself he'd processed and resolved the way you process and resolve things when there's no alternative. And he understood with sudden disorienting clarity that he had not resolved anything. He had simply set it down somewhere and walked away from it, and then built a room around the place where he'd set it and called that room a life. She was watching him with the quiet certainty of someone who has reached the same destination from a different direction. This is complicated, he said. It is, she agreed. You live in New York. I do. My whole life is here. I know Ryan. Lily's whole life is here. I know, she said, steady and direct. I'm not asking you to rearrange anything. I'm not asking for anything tonight. She paused. She exhaled. I'm just sitting here, in your house, and I am more at ease than I have been in years, and I needed you to know that. He sat with that. Let it be true, without immediately trying to solve it. Okay, he said finally. Okay, she said. They sat in the quiet for another hour talking about nothing important and everything real. College memories, small embarrassments, the way certain years feel like they lasted 3 years, and certain years disappear. They talked until Lily called down from upstairs, asking if the light under the door meant they were still awake, and Ryan called back, "Yes, go to sleep," and they heard her shuffle back to bed with the theatrical heaviness of a 9-year-old registering protest. Sophia laughed softly. Ryan smiled into the dark. When she finally said goodnight and went down the hall, he sat alone in the living room for a few minutes in the specific silence of a house where there is a person sleeping in the spare room, and it doesn't feel strange anymore. That was the part that got him. Not the feelings he could identify and name, but the ones that had quietly made themselves at home without asking permission. The ones that had rearranged the furniture of him while he was busy being practical until he looked around one evening and thought, when did this become the life I'm afraid of losing? He turned off the lamp, went to bed, and for the first time in a long time the house felt exactly the right size. Monday came the way hard days always do, quietly, without warning, wearing the face of an ordinary morning. Ryan was at the stove when Sophia came out of the spare room, already dressed, phone in hand, the corporate version of herself fully assembled and present in a way that was slightly different from the woman who'd laughed at Lily's quesadillas 4 days ago. Not worse, just different. Like she'd put on armor that fit perfectly because she'd been wearing it for 11 years. Board call at 8, she said, pouring her own coffee. Now she'd stopped asking if that was okay, somewhere around day 5. Marcus? Ryan asked. Marcus and the 3 board members he's already spoken to. She said it flat and clean. He's been busy. Ryan turned from the stove and looked at her. How many of the board does he have? 3 out of 7. Enough to be uncomfortable. Not enough to move without me. She wrapped both hands around the mug. He's been telling them I'm emotionally compromised, that staying up here is evidence of poor judgment. The words landed in the kitchen like something thrown. He said that, Ryan said carefully. He implied it with enough precision that it amounts to the same thing. Her voice was controlled, but her knuckles around the mug were white. He told them I've been in a small mountain town for 2 weeks, making personal decisions under personal influence, and that the board should consider whether my hesitation about the acquisition is professional or... She stopped, exhaled through her nose. Personal. Ryan was very still. He means me. He doesn't know about you specifically. He just knows I'm somewhere I shouldn't be according to his model of how I should operate. She set the mug down. But yes, essentially, he means whatever I found up here that made me stop running for 5 minutes. The kitchen was quiet, except for the sound of eggs in the pan. Ryan turned off the burner. What do you need from me right now? She looked at him, surprised again by the directness of it. He'd noticed she was always slightly surprised when he asked that question, like she'd spent so long being the one who handled things that being asked what she needed had become a foreign language. Nothing, she said. Then more honestly, I just needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't going to immediately tell me how to fix it. I'm not going to tell you how to fix it, he said. I know. She picked the mug back up. That's why I told you. Lily appeared at the bottom of the stairs in her soccer jersey, which she wore on non-game days for reasons she'd never adequately explained, and looked between the two of them with the forensic attention of someone who has learned to read rooms by necessity. Is it a work thing? She asked. Yes, Sophia said. Is it bad? It's manageable, Sophia said. And then, meeting Lily's eyes directly, I've handled worse. Lily nodded, apparently satisfied. Dad burned the eggs. I did not burn. Ryan looked at the pan. The edges were dark. Those are intentional. You always say that, Lily said, and climbed onto the kitchen stool and accepted her plate with the patience of someone long accustomed to intentional eggs. The board call lasted 2 hours and 11 minutes. Ryan knew because he was in the shop the entire time, and the silence from the house had a specific quality to it, the held breath quality of something important being decided. He changed out brake pads on Mrs. Albright's Subaru. He replaced a serpentine belt on a truck he'd been meaning to get to for a week. He worked steadily and did not check the clock more than 6 times. When Sophia came into the shop at 10:20, he knew from the way she walked, not defeated, not triumphant, but the walk of someone who has just fought something hard and is still standing. How did it go? He asked. I retained the vote, she said. 7-0 because I reminded the 3 that Marcus had spoken to that he doesn't have signing authority. I do. and anything they agreed to without my signature is legally unenforceable." She paused. "And then I terminated Marcus." Ryan blinked. "You fired him." "Effective immediately." She sat down on the stool by the window, her stool he'd stopped thinking of it as anything else. 7 years, and I did it in 4 sentences on a video call. She looked at her hands. "It didn't feel the way I thought it would." "How did it feel?" "Sad," she said. "Simply. And necessary. Both at the same time." "That's usually how the right decisions feel," he said. She looked up at him. "You speak from experience." "I've made a few," he said. "The ones that felt purely good were usually wrong. The ones that felt like something torn were usually right." She was quiet for a moment, absorbing that. "I need to go back to New York," she said. "Not permanently, but I need to be there in person to manage the transition. A week, maybe 2. The air in the shop changed almost imperceptibly. Ryan kept his hands on the brake rotor he was holding and kept his voice level. "Of course. I'll come back," she said. And then, like she'd heard how that sounded and wanted to be precise, "I want to come back. I'm not saying it to be polite." He looked at her across the shop. "I know the difference," he said. She held his gaze for a beat. "I know you do." She stood. "I'll tell Lily." "She's going to take it better than you think," he said. "Or she's going to look at me with those eyes and I'll feel it all the way down," Sophia said. And she went inside. Jepai. Lily took it better than Sophia thought, and worse than Ryan predicted, which landed somewhere in the exact middle of expectation. She was quiet when Sophia told her the particular quiet that wasn't absence but accumulation, like she was taking everything in and not releasing any of it yet. Then she asked one question. "Are you coming back?" "Yes," Sophia said. No qualification. No "I hope to" or "I plan to." Just yes. Lily looked at her for 3 seconds. Then she nodded and went back to her homework. Ryan, watching from the doorway, felt his daughter's restraint like something in his own chest. Later, when Sophia was packing the spare room and Lily was nominally doing homework, but demonstrably just sitting at the kitchen table being very loud about being very quiet, Ryan sat across from her. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," she said. She was pressing her pencil into the paper harder than the math required. "Lily." She looked up. "She said she's coming back." "She is." "You don't know that." "I know Sophia," he said. "Well enough to know she doesn't say things she doesn't mean." Lily looked at him with those eyes. "Do you like her, Dad? Like actually?" He held her gaze. Thought about lying or deflecting or doing the parental thing where you redirect. Decided against all of it. "Yes," he said. "I do." Lily absorbed that. "She likes you too," she said, matter of fact. "She watches you when you're not looking." Ryan said nothing. "It's not weird," Lily said. "I'm just telling you." She went back to her math. "You should tell her, before she leaves." "You're 9, he said. "So," he stood up. "Finish your homework. Tell her Dad." He went to find Sophia. She was in the spare room, which was now mostly packed, sitting on the edge of the bed, with her phone in her hand, and a look on her face that he'd learned to read over 3 weeks. The look of someone managing 16 things simultaneously, and doing it so competently that the effort was almost invisible. Almost. He knocked on the open door. She looked up. "Flight's at 7 tomorrow morning," she said. "I've got a car coming at 4:30. 4:30, he repeated. "I know, I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." He leaned against the doorframe. "You've got a company to run." "I've got a company to save," she corrected, quiet and precise. "There's a difference." She set the phone down. "My new CFO interim for now starts Monday. I've already drafted the restructuring plan. 3 months of focused effort and the remote framework is operational, which means I can—" She stopped. "Can what?" he asked. She looked at him. "Have choices," she said. "About where I am." He was quiet for a moment. Then he walked into the room and sat in the chair across from her, the chair her coat had been on for 3 weeks, the chair he'd brought in from the hall when she first arrived, because there was nowhere to sit. He'd never moved it back out. "I need to say something," he said. "Okay," she said carefully. "I've been—" He stopped, tried again. "I am not good at this. Saying things before I've fully processed them. It's not how I'm built." He looked at his hands. "But Lily told me to tell you before you left, and she's 9 years old, and she's already smarter than me, so—" Sophia was very still. "I don't know what this is," he said. "I know what it was 15 years ago. And I know it wasn't finished. It just stopped because of distance and timing and the things we didn't say. And I've been watching you for 3 weeks in my house and with my daughter and in my shop, and I—" He exhaled. "I haven't felt like this in a long time. And I'm not sure what to do with that. But I wanted you to know it. Before you left." The room was completely quiet. Sophia looked at him for a long moment, and he could see the whole of it moving across her face. Not drama, not performance, just the actual weight of it, the real thing unfiltered. "When I drove up that mountain road," she said slowly, "I was running. I do that. I've done it my whole life. I get overwhelmed, and I get in a car or a plane, and I put distance between myself and the thing that's too big to look at directly." She paused. "I didn't know you were here. I want to be clear about that. I didn't know." "I know," he said. "But I've thought about you," she said. "Not every day, not in a way I let myself pay attention to. But you were—" She looked away for a moment, then back. "You were the one I compared people to, without realizing I was doing it. The way they listened, the way they said things, whether they were—" She stopped. "Whether they were real, the way you're real. I kept measuring, and nobody—" She exhaled. "Nobody landed where you did." Ryan said nothing. The words were inside him like something struck still vibrating. "I'm not asking you to wait," she said. "I'm not asking for anything that isn't offered. But I needed you to know that this—" She gestured between them. "This is the realest thing that's happened to me in years, and I am not walking away from it. I'm walking to New York to handle what needs to be handled, and then I'm coming back here. To Crestfall. To Lily. To—" She stopped, held his gaze. "To whatever this is, if you still want it." He looked at her. "I still want it," he said. Something released in her face. Not dramatic, not a collapse, but the specific release of a person who has been holding something carefully for a long time and has finally found somewhere safe to set it down. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then Ryan leaned forward in the chair, and Sophia leaned forward on the bed, and they met in the middle, not a kiss, not yet something quieter than that, his forehead to hers. Both of them just breathing in the same space for a few seconds, the 15 years, and the 3 weeks and everything in between compressed into a single still point. Then Lily knocked loudly on the open door and said, "Are you guys done? Because I found ice cream in the back of the freezer and I need supervision to eat it." They pulled back. Ryan looked at Sophia. Sophia pressed her hand over her mouth to contain the laugh. "She has no concept of timing," Ryan said. "She has perfect timing," Sophia said. "Come on." They went to eat ice cream, the three of them, at 10:30 on a Sunday night, which Ryan would normally have had an opinion about, and did not. The alarm went off at 4 the next morning, and Ryan was already awake. He made coffee, while Sophia loaded her bag into the rental. The house was dark and quiet, and Lily was asleep, and there was a specific loneliness to 4 in the morning that Ryan had always found clarifying, like the world stripped down to what was actually true. Sophia came inside for the coffee. They stood in the kitchen in the dark. "I'll call when I land," she said. "You don't have to—" "I want to." She looked at him. "I want to, Ryan." He nodded. "Okay." The car came at 4:28. She put on her coat. He walked her to the door, and she stopped on the threshold and turned back and looked at him. One more time, really looked the way she'd looked at him on the mountain road when she first said his name, like she was making sure he was real. Don't forget to eat lunch, she said. He almost laughed. Don't run yourself into the ground. Old habits, she said. Break them, he said. You're good at that. She smiled, tired and real and fully hers. Then she walked to the car, and he stood in the doorway and watched the taillights disappear down the mountain road, and this time it was different from every other time he'd watched someone leave. Because she'd said she was coming back, and she meant it. He went inside, turned off the porch light, stood in the kitchen for a moment in the dark and the quiet and the specific fullness of a house that still felt inhabited even when one person had just left it. Then his phone buzzed on the counter. A text. Already missed the coffee. S. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he typed back, "It'll be here." He put the phone in his pocket and went to the shop because it was 4:30 in the morning and there was work to do, and for the first time in a very long time, the work felt like something he was doing inside a life that was full rather than a life he was filling. He didn't call it hope, but it was. She called when she landed. 7:43 in the morning New York time, which meant Ryan was already an hour into work, and Lily was already on the bus, and the house was the particular kind of quiet that it had become since Monday, not empty exactly, but aware of its own space in a new way. He answered on the second ring. "You landed?" he said. "I landed," she said. Her voice had the tired, slightly compressed quality of someone who has been awake since 4 and is running on coffee and forward motion. "It's loud here. It's always loud there. I know, I just..." A pause. "I forgot how loud I think. After 3 weeks in Crestfall." Another pause. "How's the shop?" "Mrs. Garfield's Jeep came in. Needs a new alternator." "Of course it does." "How'd you know?" "She drives like she's punishing the car," Sophia said, and she said it with such casual certainty, the certainty of someone who had absorbed 3 weeks of Crestfall gossip and retained all of it, that Ryan stood in his shop and laughed for the first time since 4:30 that morning. "Get some sleep," he said. "I have 3 meetings before noon." "Sophia, I know." He could hear the smile in it. "I'll sleep tonight. Tell Lily." She stopped. "Actually, tell her yourself. Tell her I said she owes me a rematch on the penalty kicks." "She's going to hold you to that." "Good," Sophia said. "I'm counting on it." She hung up. Ryan held the phone for a moment. Then he went back to Mrs. Garfield's Jeep. The first week without her was functional and fine, and quietly difficult in a way he didn't examine too closely. The rhythms of the Carter household reasserted themselves. Breakfast, school bus shop, soccer practice, dinner, homework, bed, and from the outside, nothing had changed. From the inside, there was a spare room with a made bed and a chair he still hadn't moved back to the hall, and a coffee mug on the second hook that Lily had put there the morning after Sophia left without saying anything about it. He didn't move the mug. Lily didn't mention it. They talked every evening. Not long calls. Sophia was working 18-hour days, restructuring the leadership team, installing the interim CFO, meeting with the board individually to rebuild alignment. She was precise about the facts and careful about her energy, but Ryan was learning to hear what was underneath the exhaustion she managed. Around the moments of uncertainty, she stated flatly so they couldn't ambush her. On Thursday, she called later than usual. "You still up?" she asked. "It's 9:30, he said. "I'm not 60. You go to bed at 9:45. I've done the math." He was in fact already in bed with a book he wasn't reading. "What happened today?" he asked. A breath. "The private equity firm made a direct approach to 2 of my board members, bypassed me entirely, offered them personal incentive packages if they vote for the acquisition." Ryan sat up. "Can they do that?" "It's legally gray. Ethically, it's..." She stopped. "It's aggressive. It means they want this deal badly enough to play dirty for it. Which means my company is worth more than the offer they made." A pause. "Which means I was right not to sell." "You were always right not to sell." "I know. But being right and proving it are different fights." Her voice was tight, controlled. "I need to call my attorney tonight, and my 2 most loyal board members, And then I need to sleep, except I won't. Sophia. He kept his voice steady. You built this company in a studio apartment selling your car twice. You have handled harder. Silence on the other end. Say that again, she said quietly. You have handled harder. Another silence. Then, okay. Just that. Small and certain. Okay. Call your attorney, he said. Calling now, she said. Good night, Ryan. Good night. He lay back in the dark after she hung up and stared at the ceiling, and understood with complete clarity something he'd been working around for 2 weeks, that he was in this. Not approaching it, not considering it. In it. Fully and without reservation. The kind of in that doesn't ask your permission first. It was terrifying. It was also, underneath the terror, the most solid thing he'd felt in years. The twist came on a Friday, 11 days after she left, and it came from a direction he hadn't anticipated. Lily came home from school, dropped her bag, climbed onto the kitchen stool, and said without preamble, Emma Garrison says Sophia isn't coming back. Ryan looked up from the counter. Emma Garrison is 10. She heard her mom say it. Lily's voice was careful, calibrated, doing the thing where she reported facts while withholding the feeling attached to them. She said people like Sophia don't stay in places like Crestfall, that it was nice for a visit, but real life is different. The kitchen was quiet. What did you say to Emma? Ryan asked. I said Emma's mom doesn't know Sophia. Lily looked at him. Do you think she's coming back, Dad? Really? He put down what he was doing and gave her his full attention. Yes, he said. I do. How do you know? Because I know her. But people change, Lily said. The sentence had weight behind it, the weight of a 9-year-old who has watched one parent leave and has spent years quietly performing the math of reliability. People say things, and then life happens, and the things they said... She stopped, looked at her hands. Ryan crossed to her, sat on the stool beside her. Lily, he said, look at me. She did. Sophia is not your mom, he said carefully and directly, because his daughter deserved the direct thing. What happened with your mom was not your fault. It was not my fault, and it had nothing to do with whether we were worth staying for. Some people aren't built to stay, and your mom is one of them, and that is the hardest truth I've had to hold for you. But Sophia is different, and I know that's a risk. I know that's a thing I'm asking you to trust without guarantee. He paused. But I believe her. And in my life, I believe very few things without evidence. She is evidence. Lily looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were shiny, but she didn't cry. She never cried easily. Okay, she said. Okay. You're usually right about the important stuff. She got off the stool. Can we have pasta tonight? He stared at her. The evidence thing was good, Dad, she said from the hallway. You should tell her you said that. He pulled out his phone. He texted Sophia, Lily wants pasta, and also you to know your evidence. 3 minutes later, I have never been called evidence before. I think I love it. Making pasta tonight too. Thinking of you both. He read it twice, put the phone in his pocket, made the pasta. She came back on a Wednesday, exactly 3 weeks after she'd left, and she didn't tell him what time. She just sent a text at 2 in the afternoon that said ETA 4. He was under a truck at 2:15 when his phone buzzed. He read it, set the phone down, picked it up again, set it down. At 3:45 he washed his hands, changed his shirt, went inside. At 4:03 he heard tires on the gravel. He stayed in the kitchen. He didn't go to the door. He told himself that was a reasonable choice, and not a thing he was doing because he needed the 10 extra seconds to get his bearings. But both things were probably true. The knock on the door anyway, even though she'd stayed here for 3 weeks, and the door was unlocked, and she knew it. He opened it. She was standing on the porch with her bag and her coat, and the same dark hair and direct eyes, and she looked different slightly. The New York version of her, buttoned up and precise. But underneath that, and visible to him now in a way it hadn't been 5 weeks ago, was the woman who'd sat at his kitchen table eating chili and laughing at Lily's assessments and saying real things in the dark. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. "I'm back." "You're back," he said. She looked at him steadily. "You going to let me in?" He stepped back. She walked in, set her bag down in the hall, looked at the kitchen, the living room, the chair that was still in its place, the mug on the second hook. She looked at the mug for a moment. "Lily put that there," he said. Sophia nodded once, slow and deliberate. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. "She's at practice," he said. "Back by 5:30. "I know, I texted her." He looked at her. "You texted my daughter." "She texted me first," Sophia said. 3 days ago. She wanted to know if I had a preferred pasta shape because she was planning the welcome back dinner." Ryan stared. "She settled on rigatoni," Sophia said. "Apparently it holds sauce better. She was very specific about this." "She's 9, he said helplessly. "She's extraordinary," Sophia said. And the way she said it, quiet and absolute and without performance, landed somewhere in him that was already full and somehow made room anyway. He crossed the kitchen. She met him halfway because that was how Sophia did things. She always met you halfway. She never made you walk the whole distance alone. And this time, it wasn't foreheads together in a spare room. This time he put his hands on her face, and she put her hands on his arms, and they kissed the way people kiss when they've been waiting 15 years, plus 3 weeks, and have finally run out of reasons to wait. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't cinematic. It was warm and certain, and tasted like coffee and coming home. And when they pulled back, she was looking at him with those direct eyes, and he was looking at her, and neither of them said anything for a moment, because there wasn't anything to say that the moment wasn't already saying. "Hi," she said again, softer. "Hi," he said. "I turned down the acquisition," she said. "Final answer in writing delivered yesterday morning." He looked at her carefully. "How does it feel?" "Like something torn," she said. "And right." She held his gaze. "I implemented the remote framework. My CTO has operational authority for day-to-day. I have full strategic control. I can work from anywhere with a strong enough connection." She paused. "Crestfall has decent internet." "It's gotten better," he said. "I know. I checked." She almost smiled. "I'm not moving here tomorrow. I want to be clear about that. I'm not going to show up and rearrange your life and Lily's life and expect it to just absorb me. That's not—" "Sophia," he said. "I mean it. I want to be careful. I want to do this right." "I know you do," he said. "That's one of the things." He stopped. "One of the things?" she asked. He looked at her. "One of the things I—" He exhaled, said the harder, truer version. "One of the things I love about you." The word landed between them like a stone into still water, clean and deliberate, and sending circles outward. He'd used it on purpose. He wasn't a man who used words without purpose. Sophia heard it. He watched her hear it. Watched the thing behind her eyes that was careful and controlled and had protected her for a long time, register the word, and then slowly, deliberately choose not to protect her from it. "One of the things," she repeated quietly. "Yes." She held his gaze. "I love you too, Ryan Carter," she said. "I think I have for a very long time. I think I just drove to the wrong mountains for 15 years. He pulled her back in. She came without hesitation. Vic. Lily arrived home at 5:28, which was early, which was not an accident. She came through the door, dropped her bag, and found them at the kitchen table, Sophia's laptop open, Ryan's coffee in front of him, the two of them talking in the easy way of people who have learned each other's rhythms. Lily stood in the doorway for 1 full second, taking complete inventory with those eyes that missed nothing. Then she went directly to the refrigerator, pulled out the ingredients for rigatoni, and set them on the counter. "I'm making dinner," she announced. "You're 9, Ryan said. "I know the recipe," she said. "Sophia sent it to me." Ryan looked at Sophia. Sophia looked at Ryan. "You sent my 9-year-old a pasta recipe," he said. "She asked for it," Sophia said. "She was very specific about what she wanted." "She's always specific," he said. "I'm standing right here," Lily said, filling the pasta pot with water. "We know," they said at the same moment. Lily looked over her shoulder at them. And she smiled a full, unguarded 9-year-old smile, the kind she didn't give to everyone, the kind that meant she'd made a decision and was at peace with it. The kind that meant okay. This is good. Ryan watched his daughter cook and felt Sophia beside him at the kitchen table and understood that this was it, not the grand arrival of something, but the quiet settling of it. Not the beginning of a story, but the story itself, already in progress, already true. He didn't need to name it. It was already named. It was Tuesday pasta and soccer practice, and a mug on the second hook, and a chair that never went back to the hall. It was calls at 7:43 in the morning, and texts that said thinking of you both. It was Lily's eyes doing their forensic inventory and finding something worth keeping. It was two people who had stood at the edge of something at 21 and not jumped, and who had arrived by entirely different roads, and 15 years of living at the same kitchen in the same mountain town, older and more careful and more real than they'd been, and ready in a way that only time can make you. The rigatoni was excellent. Lily accepted their praise with the composed dignity of someone who expected nothing less. Sophia washed the dishes. Ryan dried. Lily sat at the table and did homework and occasionally offered commentary that nobody asked for and everybody appreciated. After they walked, the three of them, out into the cold November evening, up the road that curved along the ridge where the mountains turned the last light into something pink and gold and enormous. Lily walked ahead, as she always did, because she always needed to be slightly ahead of everything. Ryan and Sophia walked behind close enough that their arms touched, and Ryan didn't move away, and neither did she. Lily stopped at the top of the ridge and turned around. She looked at the two of them walking toward her, her father, the woman who had come back, and she tilted her head slightly, that precise evaluating angle. "Good," she called. Ryan looked at Sophia. Sophia looked at him. Both of them looked at Lily. "Good," Ryan called back. Lily turned around and kept walking, satisfied, sure-footed, already looking at what was ahead. And the mountains held them, all three of them, in that particular unhurried light that asks nothing of you except that you be present, that you show up, that you stay. They stayed. That was the whole story. That was all of it. The car that broke down on the right mountain road, the coffee on the second hook, the pasta that held its sauce, the 15 years it took two people to find their way back to a moment they hadn't been ready for the first time. Not fate, not luck, just two people who finally stopped moving long enough to let something real catch up with them. And it did, and it was enough. It was everything.